Genghis Khan, born Temüjin, circa 1162 August 1227, also known as Chinggis Khan, was the founder and first Khan of the Mongol Empire. After spending most of his life uniting the Mongol tribes, he launched a series of military campaigns, conquering large parts of China and Central Asia. Born between 1155 and 1167 and given the name Temüjin, he was the eldest child of Yasuge, a Mongol chieftain of the Borjigin clan, and his wife Hoelin. When Temüjin was 8, his father died and his family was abandoned by its tribe. Reduced to near poverty, Temüjin killed his older half-brother to secure his familial position. His charismatic personality helped to attract his first followers and to form alliances with two prominent steppe leaders named Jamuka and Togrul. They worked together to retrieve Temüjin's newlywed wife Borte, who had been kidnapped by raiders. As his reputation grew, his relationship with Jamuka deteriorated into open warfare. Temüjin was badly defeated in circa 1187, and may have spent the following years as a subject of the Jin dynasty. Upon re-emerging in 1196, he swiftly began gaining power. Togrul came to view Temüjin as a threat and launched a surprise attack on him in 1203. Temüjin retreated, then regrouped and overpowered Togrul. After defeating the Naiman tribe and executing Jamuka, he was left as the sole ruler on the Mongolian steppe. Temüjin formally adopted the title Genghis Khan, the meaning of which is uncertain, at an assembly in 1206. Carrying out reforms designed to ensure long-term stability, he transformed the Mongols' tribal structure into an integrated meritocracy dedicated to the service of the ruling family. After thwarting a coup attempt from a powerful shaman, Genghis began to consolidate his power. In 1209, he led a large-scale raid into the neighboring Western Shah, who agreed to Mongol terms the following year. He then launched a campaign against the Jin dynasty, which lasted for 4 years and ended in 1215 with the capture of the Jin capital Jiangdu. His general Jebe annexed the Central Asian state of Karakitai in 1218. Genghis was provoked to invade the Khwarezmian Empire the following year by the execution of his envoys. The campaign toppled the Khwarezmian state and devastated the regions of Transoxiana and Khorasan, while Jebe and his colleague Subutai led an expedition that reached Georgia and Kievan Rus. In 1227, Genghis died while subduing the rebellious Western Shah. Following a 2-year interregnum, his third son and heir Ogedei acceded to the throne in 1229. Genghis Khan remains a controversial figure. He was generous and intensely loyal to his followers, but ruthless towards his enemies. He welcomed advice from diverse sources in his quest for world domination, for which he believed the shamanic supreme deity Tengri had destined him. The Mongol army under Genghis killed millions of people, yet his conquests also facilitated unprecedented commercial and cultural exchange over a vast geographical area. He is remembered as a backwards, savage tyrant in Russia and the Arab world, while recent Western scholarship has begun to reassess its previous view of him as a barbarian warlord. He was posthumously deified in Mongolia. Modern Mongolians recognize him as the founding father of their nation. In 1177, Temüjin went back to the Khanjarad and married Borte, but she was kidnapped shortly thereafter in a Merkit raid. Temüjin gathered 20,000 warriors and enlisted the help of his blood brother Jamuka and Togrul, the Khan of the Karites. Together they helped Temüjin get back Borte. It's not clear how she was returned or whether a military action was involved in the process. One version of events claimed the combined forces routed the Merkit and she was rescued along with much booty. But this could have been a composite narrative combining a later military action with an earlier event. Borte gave birth soon afterwards, and although the child may have been fathered by a Merkit, Temüjin decided to raise him as his own anyway, naming him Hochi. The period of Temüjin's life from 1177 to 1191 is largely unknown, except that Temüjin often fought the Taichud, Saljiu, Katagan, and Tatars with mixed results. One of the clans following Temüjin eventually left and was defeated by the Taichud, after which they joined Jamuka. During the 1180s there was a drought in Mongolia which increased conflict between the tribes, but Temüjin only played a limited part in these affairs. The previous attack on the Merkit that resulted in the rescue of Borte may have been a separate campaign that occurred in 1191 and was confused in the sources. In 1191, Jamuka, Temüjin, and Togrul and his brother Jaka Gambu decided to attack the Merkit. However, Temüjin and Togrul were late to the rendezvous area by 3 days, which greatly angered Jamuka. Together the 40,000-strong allied forces made a detour east to attack the enemy camp from the northeast. A fisherman spotted them and warned the Merkit of the impending attack. but the Merkith failed to make the necessary preparations and dispersed. Temüjin and Jamuka stayed together for a while after the battle. At one point they sent an embassy to the Katagan and Saljiu to try to win them over against the Taichud. In 1187 or 1193, Temüjin and Jamuka split when retainers of the two camps clashed over horse thievery. Temüjin took with him 41 tribal leaders and 10,000 men from Jamuka and was elected Khan by his followers in the following days. The Taichud became frightened by Temüjin's power and joined Jamuka. Jamuka assembled 30,000 men and moved in an arc from the north to flank Temüjin's position. The two forces were evenly matched, but Temüjin's side suffered slightly worse than Jamuka, and was forced to retreat to a defensible pass called Jareen near the Onan River. Despite Jamuka's victory, his harsh treatment of captives disgusted his allies so much that they defected to Temüjin, bringing with them 10,000 men. With less than 20,000 men at his side, Jamuka was no longer able to challenge Temüjin on the upper Karelin River and retreated further east. Modern historians such as Rachnevsky and Timothy may consider it very likely that Temüjin spent a large portion of the decade following the clash at Dailin Baljud as a servant of the Jurchen Jin dynasty in North China. Zhao Hong recorded that the future Genghis Khan spent several years as a slave of the Jin. Formerly seen as an expression of nationalistic arrogance, the statement is now thought to be based in fact, especially as no other source convincingly explains Temüjin's activities between Dailin Baljud and circa 1195. Taking refuge across the border was a common practice both for disaffected steppe leaders and disgraced Chinese officials. Temüjin's re-emergence, having retained significant power, indicates that he probably profited in the service of the Jin, as he would later go on to overthrow that state. Such an episode, detrimental to Mongol prestige, was omitted from all their sources. Zhao Hong was bound by no such taboos. In 1195, the Jurchen Jin dynasty allied with the Tatars to attack the Khanjarad. The resulting military operation was a success, but the Tatar leader, Zushu, quarreled over the distribution of loot. Breakdown of communication led to a Jin attack on the Tatars in the following year. The Jin general Wanyan Shang sent a vanguard detachment under Wanyan Angguo toward the Karelin River, where they held off Tatar forces for 3 days before the main body of the Jin army arrived and defeated them. The Khanjarad had not forgotten their previous conflicts. On the 4th of February 1196, they struck deep into Jin territory and defeated a Jin detachment. Meanwhile, the Tatars' fleeing Jin forces were intercepted by Togrul and Temüjin. The beleaguered Tatars chose to fight in a makeshift barricade instead of on the open field, probably because they were much weaker than the opposing force. The resulting melee resulted in the complete defeat of the Tatars. Togrul and Temüjin later met with Jin officials, who were extremely pleased with the destruction of the Tatars, and awarded them with titles. One of the Jin officials, a Khitan by the name of Yelu Ahai, was so impressed with Temüjin that he and his brother Tuha later defected to him in 1203. Soon after the defeat of the Tatars, Togrul was overthrown by his brother Urkkara, who was backed by Ananch Bilge Khan of the Naimans. A Naiman force entered Karaiti territory and attacked Temüjin's camp, causing some damage. Togrul fled to the Kara Kitai. The defeated Tatar Zushu submitted to the Jin and rebelled again in the same year. Zushu submitted to the Jin again in 1198 and died soon afterward. Wanyan Shang ordered the construction of extensive defensive works to protect sedentary population in the north. No further Jin campaigns against the steppe nomads were carried out with the same success as that of 1196. Threatened by the Naimans' increasing influence, Temüjin sought help from the Jurchens to conduct a joint expedition against the Naimans. The Jurchens responded by killing Temüjin's envoys. Temüjin attacked them in 1196 and subjugated the majority of the Jurchens, including Mukhali, who would later become one of the Mongol Empire's foremost generals. Togrul's brother Urkkara also joined Temüjin after he helped him drive off the Merkith. In 1197, Togrul returned and re-established himself as leader of the Karaites with the help of Temüjin. In the winter of 1197-8, Temüjin eliminated the remaining Jurchens and executed their leaders. From 1198 to 1199, Temüjin and Togrul preyed on the Merkith, driving them ever further north. Togrul chose not to share the booty with Temüjin, which upset him greatly. Ananch Bilge Khan died in 1198, splitting the Naimans between his two sons Tiyang Khan and Bayrak Khan. In 1199, Temüjin, Togrul, and Jamuka attacked Bayrak west of the Altai Mountains. Alarmed by the eastern invaders, Tiyang sent a force under Köks Sabrak, which intercepted Togrul and took half his people hostage. Temüjin sent Mukali, Orikula, Chalan, and Boorju to support the Karites. They arrived in time to turn the tide of battle and routed the Naimans. Despite the victory in battle, the Allied forces moved further east, possibly out of fear that the two Naiman factions might recoup and unite against them. In 1200, Temüjin and Togrul migrated eastwards along the Onan River into Taichud territory and defeated the Taichud in battle. Temüjin chased the fleeing Taichud to a river crossing where he was surprised by a sudden counterattack that wounded him. The battle continued the next day until the Taichud had been defeated. Next, the Katagan, Saljiu, Dorban, Tatar, and Konjarad tribes formed a coalition against Temüjin. The two sides engaged in a heavily contested battle that ended in retreat for Togrul and Temüjin. While Togrul was incapacitated for 2 years, Temüjin recovered his losses and returned to wage war on the Tatars in Dorban while his brother Khazar attacked the Konjarad. Temüjin's enemies, especially the Konjarad, then gathered around Jamuka and named him Gur Khan in opposition to Temüjin. Jamuka's forces suffered a defeat against Temüjin in 1201, resulting in a brief defection by the Konjarad before they returned to fighting Temüjin the next year. In 1202, Temüjin introduced new rules for distributing plunder. Several of his relatives disagreed with the new way of distribution and left with 10,000 men. In the same year, Temüjin finished mopping up the Tatars. He intended to have all the Tatar captives executed, probably in revenge for his father. But his half-brother Belgutai leaked the information to the prisoners, who broke away and barricaded themselves on a hill. Temüjin's brother Khazar, whose wife was Tatar, also hid 500 captives who were supposed to be killed. Bayrak Khan assembled a large coalition army including even Jamuka and the Oirats numbering 70,000 strong. Together they advanced on Temüjin and Togrul's position at Bir Lake. Temüjin and Togrul moved their forces behind the Jin defensive fortifications. Both sides' forces were scattered and the weather took a turn for the worse with heavy snows and wind blasting the battlefield. Buryat decided to retreat but got stuck in an open field at one point. The coalition army fell into confusion. Jamuka took the opportunity to plunder his allies' baggage. This came to be known as the Battle of Koyitin. Togrul's son Sengam convinced his father to turn on Temüjin. They planned to ambush him while he was on his way to a wedding between the two families to cement their alliance. But a Karaite warned Temüjin beforehand and spoiled their plan. A battle ensued with Togrul and Jamuka taking the offensive by attacking Khazar and defeating his army. Khazar escaped but most of his family was captured. Next they advanced on Temüjin, surprising him from the south. But Temüjin managed to move to a smaller enclosure to nullify the enemy's superior numbers. Sengam was wounded in battle, throwing his forces into confusion and allowing Temüjin to retreat. Togrul decided not to give chase and returned to camp. This came to be known as the Battle of Kalakaljit Sands. After this heavy defeat, Temüjin and the leaders of his remaining followers, a socially, culturally, and religiously heterogeneous mixture of people, swore an oath of brotherhood which became known as the Baljuna Covenant. Meanwhile, Jamuka and a large portion of Togrul's allies decided to split from him. When Togrul caught wind of this, he attacked them, and some of them defected to Temüjin. By autumn of 1203, the situation between the two sides had been reversed. Temüjin's forces numbered more than 40,000 while Togrul had barely half of that. Temüjin scouted out Togrul's camp under false pretenses of defection by Khazar. When Togrul's location had been ascertained, Temüjin's army rode through the night and surrounded the Karaite camp. The Karites fought for 3 days before they surrendered. Togrul fled the battle only to be killed by a Naiman called Kori Sabechi, who did not believe his identity. Sengam fled to western Shah. Jamuka, the Merkits, and Karites joined Tiyang Khan's Naimans in opposing Temüjin. By this time, Temüjin had 66,000 fighting men and moved most of them west in May 1204 to confront Tiyang in what became the Battle of Shakirmat. Supposedly Naiman scouts were unimpressed with the quality of Temüjin's troops, but Tiyang wanted to retreat beyond the Altai mountains to fight a war of attrition. Tiyang's son Kuchlug as well as his senior officer argued against it and convinced Tiyang to take the offensive against Temüjin. The opposition coalition forces crossed the Orkhon River but fell back to the foot of a mountain upon encountering Temüjin's forces. Temüjin ordered his army to stand in lake battle formation and to fight a chisel battle. His army dispersed in a long line as if to outflank the Naimans, which the Naimans responded by dispersing their own forces as well, having deceived the Naimans into believing that he was going for a flanking maneuver. Temüjin led a frontal assault followed by the main army led by Khazar, driving the Naimans back to a mountain. Jamuka deserted the Naimans, who rejected Temüjin's offer of surrender and fought for another day until they were all killed. Taeyang fell in battle. Kuchlug had been left to defend a rear camp. When Temüjin's army came upon him, Kuchlug fled with a few followers. Jamuka was caught soon afterward, delivered to Temüjin, and executed. Toktoa's Merkits fled southwest of Hogd and moved even further west when Temüjin moved against him. Toktoa and Kuchlug joined Bayraq Khan west of the Altai. The Uvis Merkits tried to defect to Temüjin, but Temüjin considered them too weak to be of use and did not want to integrate them, so they rebelled and took some supplies with them. The other Merkits either surrendered or were killed by 1205. One of the captured was Temüjin, who married Ogadai. She became regent of the Mongol Empire when her husband died in 1241. In April 1205, Temüjin made his first major incursion on a non-Mongol power, the Western Shah. The Khitan, Yelu Ahai, who defected to Temüjin some years ago, led the way, ostensibly in search for Sangam, Togrul's son. The Shah armies dared not fight the Mongols on the open field and made no move against them. The Mongols moved unopposed, plundering the open country, and destroying a few fortifications. After they left in June, the Shah rebuilt the places destroyed. In December a counter-raid was organized by the Shah, but ultimately no attack was made. Soon after, Sangam was killed in battle. In the summer of 1206, the Shaman Kokochu proclaimed Temüjin Genghis Khan, the universal ruler, at the Onan River. Genghis reorganized Mongol society into a military force based on units of 1,000 known as Mingan. These were not only military units but also household units and used for taxation purposes. His family members, the Altan Uru or Golden Kin, were given territory and assigned these Mingan. A 10,000-strong bodyguard unit known as the Keshig was formed from the sons of commanders to ensure their loyalty to Genghis. In the winter, Genghis ambushed Bayraq while he was out hawking and killed him. Toktoa and Kuchlug fled up along the Erdis River. In 1207, Genghis sent his son Hochi to subdue the Oirats and Kyrgyz people west of Lake Baikal. They submitted voluntarily, adding 20,000 warriors to the Mongol army.